Yeah, I am. I'm just looking at why the stream that's on 194 isn't split. So I'm trying to help it out a little. All right. Well, in any event, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, August 17th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We are coming to you through channel 194 or through a live stream. We also have a special town meeting embedded in this meeting under agenda item 5, on which there is a Zoom code for that, and I will show it up online if you wish to be a voter in that easement on 29 Bridge Street. But first, before we get going, call to order. Candace, would you mind?
Candace Bouchard.
Todd Oshalashi.
Melissa Bird.
Bob Geiger.
Andy Perez.
Sheila Sedlak.
Jack Bork.
Stephen Sedlak.
Linda Grappo.
As you can see, we're socially distancing apart from each other. Now we will do the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Item 3 is the agenda review, and Bob, you have something you want to put on because of time?
Yes, there's a timing issue. We're wish to apply for, recently the state has offered steep grants again. Even though we've been on the steep grant list, we have to recertify our request to do so, and we have to do it by Friday. So our last list expired at the end of 4 years, so I'm just asking for approval for recertification for us to apply for a steep grant.
Okay, can I have a motion to put that on the agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Todd. Is there a second? Thank you, Melissa. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We'll go under 11E, and as I've done before, somebody remind me in case I try to go past it for some reason. Next, we move to approval of minutes of our regular meeting on August 3rd, 2020. May I have a motion to approve? Okay. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Jack, for the second. Anybody have any corrections, additions for Sheila? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Next, we had the minutes of our special meeting on August 13th, 2020. That was last Thursday morning, and our guest secretary was Steve Sedlak, trained by his wife. I think he did a great job on it. They have a motion to approve those. Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for the second, Steve. Any questions or?
One thing we didn't do is when we're asking for the communication plan, we didn't give a date. I know we can't modify the minutes, but I think that's something we
I think I mentioned something about 2 weeks. If I remember, I asked Steve if maybe in 2 weeks we would get it.
So, first meeting in September, I guess.
Yeah, that would, yeah. Anything else? Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Okay, item 5 is our special town meeting. It's a request for the land swap of land that we own for a permanent easement at 29 Bridge Street. And the purpose of it is to, Bob, go ahead.
Okay,
I could read it, but.
as we've done the engineering for the project expansion on Bridge Street in terms of the road, there is one home at the bottom of 29 Bridge Street there whose piece of land we would like to swap with a piece of land in the rear which the town owns. So it's really a one-on-one swap. It allows us to expand the road without impeding the traffic flow. And the landowner would be very happy for that to happen. Likewise, we would be as well. So it's a one-for-one swap. It's a small parcel, big enough for maybe 2 automobiles to park on. So it's not a big deal, but we probably won't even begin to implement the usage of that for another 1.5 years before we actually start any project work. But this was an opportunity to get that completed. And I think this was the next stage. I still reference the same map that you've all seen before to do it again So this is just the final stage in the process to approve of the swap.
I am showing it up on the screen and at home, you should have a split screen, but I see more of us, so I don't know if this thing does anything, no? Sheila, do you know how to adjust the split screen here?
Push over.
No, it's not.
There you go.
I have it?
You
Wrong
want
way?
to go the other way.
All right, there we go. All right. Oops. Now they threw us out of there completely. Okay, we'll get the hang of it. That's our new technology that we applied.
Well, if you, tell me,
So anyway, so before you keep going,
I was gonna point it out in the map.
right, so just 1 second is, if anybody at home wants to come into a Zoom meeting for this portion for the town meeting, or if you want to call us at 860-738-6958 for any comments, just want to make sure we allow the public in, if they would like to. So we got the map back up again, so, Bob?
Okay, if you can see on Bridge Street, if you look at the map, which is the vertical up and down on your left, the little bit smaller box, that's the parcel of land that the town would like to have as we expand the construction on Bridge Street, probably a year and a half from now. And on Maple Street, which runs perpendicular there, run your arrow back and forth so they can see that, if you can, Candy.
I am.
Okay, that little spot right there is owned by the town. It's actually twice the size. We're only gonna give up half of that so the gentleman can park in the rear of his house instead of the side of his house. So it's just a one-for-one swap, and allows us to complete our construction going forward. It's a pretty small piece, if you can see dimensionally there. It's not very large at all. You could probably park a couple of cars on it, and that's it.
So downtown is over here, is the top of the, is at the top of this
Right,
screen?
it's Depot Street up there.
Where my black is showing. That's Main Street, and then Bridge Street. And so the swap is this permanent easement here, or this piece of land here. Again, if you're at home, it's 860-738-6958, or if you wanted to come in on the Zoom, there is the code there, or a phone number you can call in on. Now, we have a couple people here tonight. Would anybody like to ask any questions or about the project?
I would.
Okay, Candace, and then,
So, my understanding from what it says for the easement is that this is gonna become a one-way road eventually. And the south heading up towards Charles?
Is it, it's one way just coming up to Charles, just that one block.
No, I understand. So when it says south, so south is heading up, you can go uphill, not down it.
Correct.
Got it, okay. So we're narrowing the road and then we're gonna make it one way,
Just in that one block.
one block, exactly. Thank you.
so this is one little block here is gonna be one way up. So people, when they come down, will have to go over this way or to Pratt Street, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Did you all have a question? Okay. When your hand moves, we get all excited, somebody's gonna ask us a question. All right, may I have a motion to, approve this? Anyone?
Andy,
Yes?
are you making a motion during public hearing, or have we adjourned?
This is a town meeting.
Town meeting.
This is a town meeting.
So anybody in the room can make a motion.
Any-
Into town meeting.
Huh?
Did you make a motion to go into the town meeting?
No, I just went. Should I?
It's a separate meeting.
So you want me to? Okay, make a motion to recess and go into town meeting for the purposes of land swap for permanent easement at 29 Bridge Street.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Jack, for the second. All in favor? Okay, so there's your motion. Okay, now so now I need a motion for approving the land swap for the permanent easement at 29 Bridge Street.
Anyone in the room can make that motion? Yes.
But nobody
All right, I'll
wants
make
it. Hey, Candace, thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Linda. All right, so now for voting purposes, all of us that are voting will have to be registered electors in the town of Winchester. So if you'd like to vote and you're a registered elector in the town of Winchester, all in favor? Thank you. Sheila, you voting or no? John, you voting? Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
Are
I-
you voting?
Did you want, you just have to give your name to Sheila, that's all. Yeah, okay. All right, so it was unanimous. So it was all the selectmen, 2 audience, and you, Sheila. All right. And you know who he is, right? Do you have that gentleman's name?
I do,
Yeah, okay.
Mr. Morhart.
Huh?
Mr. Morhart.
Mr. Morhart. Oh, good. Training. Your guys are in training. It's hard to see people behind the masks. So good. So now we move to 6 citizens' comments.
With the closed meeting, closed
Oh,
meeting.
okay.
Well, we have to adjourn the town meeting.
Okay, adjourn the town meeting.
Move we adjourn the town meeting?
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. All in favor? All right, good. We're adjourned. All right, now citizens' comments. Anyone? John? Steve, you want to slide that microphone over?
Yeah, John, we are the 16th Superior Street, Winston, Connecticut. Asking about I know what our tree policy is on dirt roads, but I took a hit over there next to me on the dirt road during the storm, and it wiped out the insulator and the cross arm on the pole. And I waited 5.5 days to get that fixed. It's a little number 4 copper wire, not a tree wire, and the tree has a hole in it, and it was about 25 feet up, 22 feet up, that it just went around like this and spun backwards and just tumbled right onto the pole. And it's a new pole, they just put it in, late last year. And the old pole is still there, of course, that didn't get hit. But, we could maybe trim some of these trees that have holes in them that are rotten. In fact, it still has two more trunks sticking out of the ground, that go a lot higher, probably 40, 50 feet. And, it'd be nice to get those.
Where's that particular one located? What street?
It's at the corner of Ontario Street and, Superior Street. The pole I took the hit was 2619.
I mean, Jimmy has a pretty extensive list. We spent a lot of time trimming trees and cutting trees. We don't get them all, but we obviously didn't get that one.
No, I know that, but there's 4 more in line with that one that, are almost as bad when they're leaning over the power line.
I'll have Jimmy look at them.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? We also have a phone line to call in at 860-738-6958. 860-738-6958. Okay, town managers report, Bob?
Well, week of August the 3rd through the 9th, none of us are going to forget that one. Monday started out rather calm. I just met with the fire chief regarding, the delay and probably permanent postponement of our fireworks display, which we had postponed because of COVID. It's kind of in permanent postponement right now. We met at Elm Street, and then I sat with the current fire chief and talked about contracts for the new fire chief and some of the details going forward. I met with the police chief regarding a citizen complaint on some issues they had with our response, and the chief is still following up with that. And then I met with Attorney Bill Ryan regarding our personnel issues and some contract completion issues. We had a Board of Selectmen meeting that night. We all went home thinking the rest of the week was just going to be okay, and then Tuesday hit. Started out in the morning with Public Works and the Police Department regarding preparations for the storm we were going to have, which was just going to be a little rain. I met with Jim Rollins regarding personnel issues in his department. And we had discussions in Town Hall regarding the use of face coverings, which I'm struggling with here, breathing out of one nostril, which is driving me crazy. We talked about social distance issues, and we've been enforcing that in town, and I think almost everyone has been very compliant, and we're appreciative of that. I then met with Attorney Ryan again regarding labor contracts, COVID issues in terms of authority on requiring masks. And then at 3:17, the power went out. Here in Town Hall, we lost power, communications. I think you all are pretty familiar with everything that didn't transpire with Eversource and their responses to those of us. Immediately, Steve Williams went to work trying to collect data. We realized we're pretty quickly going to the best way to figure out what was going on, since a lot of us, even cell phones, were having a problem, was to get in our automobiles and start driving the streets and recording as fast as we could and reporting it back to Public Works. We had approximately 38 road closures due to trees. The policy with Eversource in town is that our public crews can trim trees, open up roads that are blocked by trees unless they're in power lines. Usually the prior procedures had been for Eversource trucks to come usually almost immediately within hours and tell us cut off power to certain streets so that we could go ahead and remove trees. Well, that didn't happen this time. We didn't see an Eversource truck for 36 hours. In the meantime, our guys kept going around Public Works and trying to open up as many roads as we could, as quickly as we could, and continue to do assessment. When things like that occur, the first issue is a life requirement, so we had to make sure the hospital and emergency personnel were available, make sure the hospitals were operating, made sure if we had water and sewer plants, we had a lot of generators going. All the new gas stations in town due to the last storm had generation equipment, which was good. We had some far ends of town. Stop and Shop was just temporarily altered, but right away they were up, so there were places to buy food. But in the meantime, it was getting hot, and it was very difficult for, I think, all of us. So we've since done some post-mortem to see what we can do to try to improve the situation were that to happen again. In the meantime, I think Eversource is probably going to be a lot better equipped. They had most of their repair crews down south, anticipating the storms were going to hit down there, so they didn't have repair crews in our region. So I think they've been taking a lot of heat and doing a lot of modification and changing. I could go on, but that whole week became a blur then. We worked through the evening. Wednesday morning, Public Works continued to work in alternate shifts, trying to clear trees. We had at one time at the lake, we had both east and west Lake Street blocked, so you couldn't get in or out of the lake. Some of that was opened up at least one way, but for 4 or 5 days, I guess it was 5 days, only one side of the lake was accessible. You had to drive all through the entire lake to get in or out. And then in some of our Edverons up in Winchester, they seem to be more equipped with generation. They're used to being more out in the boonies by themselves. But we had a lot of generators going, a lot of people we were trying to assist in terms of water and just any health conditions. People were on oxygen. People were still having some accidents. Although our main street was pretty accident-free, we immediately went out and put up 4-way stops because we lost all our traffic lights as well. People behaved generally pretty well, taking turns stopping at every intersection. But those issues continued on through Thursday. Again, we had pickup food for distribution scheduled, which we did do that. We're able to do that. We kind of achieved a certain degree of normality even through the storm, as people were extremely frustrated with the lack of power. I was in the same boat. Didn't get it back till Saturday night. Then we had, of course, I met every morning with the police, chief of police, the fire chief, and our emergency management director as we were trying to reduce the outages. Friday, we continued to do cleanup. As we were just finishing up, we thought we had a lot of cleanup going on, and then we blew a water main on North Main Street, which was not helpful. I think the crews that we had working on that had been working 10 hours that day, but they proceeded to clean that up and replace that water line of North Main right up by the VFW. So this week, August the 10th to the 16th, again, I meet with Steve Williams every day. And I met with our environmental attorneys regarding our solar project contract, which will have that available by next week for people to review if they would like to do that. I'll have to bring that to the Board of Selectmen for final approval. And I met with the chief again regarding updates and how we were covering the response to the storm still. We also worked Saturday and Sunday that week. I omitted Saturday and Sunday. That was just an assumption. We spent most of the day Saturday and Sunday continuing cleanups. I'm fogging up here. Tuesday, again, met with the same crew, all of our crews together again. Then I also met with the mayor. And Mayor and Governor Lamont came to have a brief conversation with both our mayor and myself before he went to visit Pearson School. It was kind of nice to see he came up. He was kind of very unassuming, came up with one driver. And we sat and chatted a brief time as we had a Coke at the Winstead Diner outside. I met with our finance director, Bruce Stratford. I meet with him almost every day as well. And we had discussions about the Laurel City Commission and the award ceremony, and I guess you had a pretty good event, I think, Tuesday night at the Little Red Barn. Wednesday, I met with residents concerning construction projects on Perch Rock Trail. Also met with our school superintendent regarding updates in general. I met with the Public Works regarding the Overlook Road projects. I just drove up there an hour and a half ago. The first series of paving is done. That road is almost complete. Should be, the final paving coat will be done probably tomorrow. SNS Paving is doing that. All the drainage is in, the curbs are in, and the storm drains are in. The first 2 inches is down. There'll be 2 to 3 more inches of paving done tomorrow. Thursday, Public Works again, continue to work on road projects. We'll give you a new update on road projects here shortly. I know that's of interest to all the selectmen. Let me see, personnel, Whiting Street. One other issue I wanted to bring up. If you notice the front of Town Hall, we just replaced our flags. Neil Hunt, who had been in charge of providing some of our replacement flags, passed away recently. And our replacement flag project was delayed. There is now a new flag up there. Both flags are new and in place. But also the very front of the building where our town clock is, Steve Vale, I don't know if you all know Steve or not, volunteered to come repair that clock, which had not been working properly. He backlit the clock. If you'll notice now, the clock is now backlit. You can see it at night, and the time's correct. So that was kind of thanks to Steve Vale for all that work. There's quite a bit of work involved. We had to do a lot of rewiring, and his ingenuity on backlighting the clock I thought was pretty good. So thanks again, Steve. He did a great job. That's it. That's kind of a summary. The whole past since last Tuesday was kind of a blur as we try to catch up right now, and we're still doing cleanup. Any other comments, questions?
I have a question about the water main break. Did that affect the industrial park north of that?
We were only down about 45 minutes. It did affect it.
Okay. And was it just one of the older pipes in that area, or was there something else?
It was an old pipe, and it just blew out in the bottom of it. And we've been replacing a lot of those, as you may know.
Right.
I hate having the surprises, but we've got over 40 miles of underground pipes. Probably half of them need to be replaced at some point in time. So we've got a schedule, but every once in a while, one pops off the schedule like that.
Yeah, I was just wondering because that area north of Route 20 intersection, I thought the pipes went in there like maybe in the late 60s.
This pipe wasn't that bad. I mean, we blow pipes frequently that are about 100 years old. This one was not that old. You're correct.
Yeah.
That did go in the early 60s.
That would have been in the early
Yeah.
60s that went in.
Because when we pulled that out, we looked at that, and it wasn't in that bad a shape, but it split on the bottom. It may have been a defect in the manufacturing. We're not exactly sure why.
Okay.
Any other questions for Bob? If not, Bruce Stratford, our finance director.
Good evening. I have a brief report on the first month of fiscal '21, which is the month of July. This is a big month in terms of tax collections, and pleased to report that we collected $11.5 million, or 48% of our budget during this July. That compares to $11.4 million, or 48% of last year's budget in last year's July. So I very much appreciate all the taxpayers for their timely payments, especially under the difficult circumstances that we experience with the COVID pandemic. Total revenues are at 34% of budget at the end of July, and that compares very favorably to the same 34% last year at this time. Our total expenditures for July, $2.7 million, which represents 8% of our $34.1 million budget, and is exactly where we expected to be. Due to the property tax collections in July, our cash position is kind of at its high watermark for the fiscal year. We had just over $19 million in cash at July 31, which will help us a great deal through the rest of the first 6 months of the fiscal year until the second installment for tax collections comes in due in January. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Bruce?
I do. Bruce, any idea how the storm cleanup is going to affect us?
So we are collecting some, it's mostly going to be overtime related charges that we actually have an opportunity to present to FEMA because of the disaster declaration. I don't have a number of what that was, but it was probably 3 or 4 days. If they work through the weekend, then it'll be pretty close to 5 or 6 days of overtime from Public Works and some police, I think.
Okay, we'll talk about it later. Anybody else? As always, Bruce is in the back of the room here, so if we have a question.
Thank you.
Anybody have any correspondence you wanted to talk about? Linda?
I don't, it wasn't for me, but I don't know if this is the time to address this, but there was I got an email on August 13th from the town regarding the independent appraiser contracted by the tax assessor.
Right.
Could you address that a little bit as to why, and what the reason is for
Well,
this?
we have a regular schedule of reassessment, and we hire professional companies from the outside who do that as a business.
So it's reassessment?
It's a reassessment. It's not a
Okay, it's
yes.
not just assessment. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, moving on to boards and commissions. Steve, is there anything?
Thank you, Katie. In your package, you see we have 2 resignations from the Senior Citizen Commission. We owe our thanks to Charlie and Francis Cooper for their long years of service as members of the commission, and we wish them well in their retirement. It sounds from the retirement letter that they're both very active, and we wish them the best and thank them on behalf of the town. You also saw in your packet a letter from the Torrington Area Health District. We're entitled to 2 representatives. We currently have 1. There are 4 meetings during the year, and I would put it out there for anyone in the public who's interested in serving on a very important commission like the Torrington Area Health District to contact the town manager's office, and we can go from there. So there's a vacancy there and a couple of vacancies on the senior commission, which we're acknowledging tonight. That would be it.
Anyone else all set? Okay. Next is new business, and I put the first one on we've talked about this before, a communication consultant for the town, for the Board of Selectmen, for the town manager's office. I talked to Bob about it. We want to put an RFP out. This is grant funded through the Building Healthier Communities Fund. We have a set amount of money each year for the next 3 years. You can see the RFP in front of you that we'll be putting out. And if you have any thoughts on that, we haven't done it yet, so I just wanted to let you bring it out to you ahead of time. I think that when we get down to item C as well, is connected to A, which is the emergency response for the storm that we just had. I think the reason I brought the RFP forward right now without having gone out to the other committees and stuff, which we can do after this for the marketing piece, but I think it's really important that we have somebody come in now to talk to them about our social media presence, our presence that can get information out, in emergencies, get information out on a regular basis of the things that are happening in town. And we have a website that we put notices out on, but we also want to have other presence, because what happens is, in the absence of our communication, sometimes other people take that on, and it starts to get very confusing, because some things are out there that are very correct. A lot of things are out there ahead of us most times, and there are just things that I think that official communications from town hall, from the town manager's office, would be helpful in that, and I think we've all agreed on that in the past. So I'll open it up to any discussion on that.
Are we ready to accept candidates for this? People wanted to apply for this RFP?
Yeah, once we put the RFP out.
Okay.
Just get that out first.
Where are we gonna post this out so people know about it?
Well, we would normally post like through Mark, but I think we're gonna have to find some other agencies that do this and make sure Mark sends it to them as well.
Yeah, I talked to a couple people about it. Of course, they are interested, but just want to know the procedure according to the selection process and information. So they're going to make a proposal to you, and then we'll figure out the timing. Is the timing proposal date, are we committed to that, September 14th?
I'd like to move it fast. I'd like to, I think the only reason we would slow down a little bit is if we couldn't figure out how many consultants to send it to, but we can certainly ask the COG for names. It'll go out, Mark will just put it out on our website and the usual places that he puts it. And like I said, if anybody knows of any places to put it, do that as well. Because as you can see in the first steps is to identify what we have,
Right.
What we have as well. And we have a Winston Town Hall Facebook page that I have no idea who started it. And I think if you go to it, it's like 2008 or 2011. I looked at a couple of them. And then there's another pages that we started, but those have gone down because they weren't correct. The police department has one, the rec department has one, civil service has one. So there's a bunch of them. So the first thing I would think that the consultant that we have would streamline, look at what we have, how we can have an official one from, like I said, from the town manager's office, where things go up on a regular basis. And then this person would help write those things and get them out.
It's a great proposal, but should we move from beyond proposal to just, do we have to approve it? Should we make a vote to approve it
I
tonight?
have a question. Is this also, this communication consultant 1099?
Yeah, it's a grant-funded consultant. It's not an employee, it would be a.
Yeah, and it is a temporary position for maybe 3 years of
I
funding.
think we'll have to decide,
Yeah,
as we
start-
proceed with it. We just need to get a commitment first and then design it. We really,
Right. Well, should we make a vote to do this? Because you've got this as a draft proposal, but should we
Yeah.
vote on it as
Sure,
a?
that'd be fine.
yeah,
Definitely, okay.
So you wanna make a motion?
Yeah, certainly. I think having unified communications in this town is so important. every time I try to post something about Soldiers Monument, I go to about 14 different Facebook pages because they all relate to Winston in some way, but it'd be really great to have a unification of that.
Well, just seeing how you mentioned that, I didn't write it in here. There is somebody that looks at these things this man was curious, used to live around the neighborhood, and has some advanced degrees in the, demographics and looking at these things. There are actually, there are a bunch of Facebook pages that are connected in the northwest corner that have about 26,000 people amongst all of those Facebook pages, all driven through a local realty firm, and they're all listed on that realty firm's webpage. And so those people are the administrators of those sites. So they look like, so there's a bunch of them out there, but they're all driven through this one tunnel. So that's why it's important too, to make sure that we get out there with our official stuff.
Yeah, what Linda and I found out when we were looking for volunteers, Facebook isn't the only social media, of course.
Correct.
You gotta use Twitter, and everybody else has social media pages.
Yeah.
Even getting stuff onto YouTube. So, yeah, do we have a specific motion, or just, you want me to make a motion saying, we
Board
would-
endorses going forward.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we consider, we accept what are we calling it? Request for proposals for communication consultant services for the town of Winchester.
Okay, is there a second, please? Thank you, Linda. Anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. Steps 1 and 2 are sort of a needs assessment. Are we assuming that whoever we hire is going to be on the third step also, would be the one to implement the plan? Or is there some chance that after a needs assessment, somebody else can do a better job?
Well, I think it'll end up coming down to money, quite honestly. I mean, it would be nice if it was just the one thing, one person, one firm that came through with it all and it just streamlined right through. But if for some reason they couldn't, then we would split it.
I got an idea the design will develop when we get started. I don't think we know how to do it. This is why we're asking them, but to your point, it may come to that.
I think I have a good idea of how it'll happen. One of the important things about having a person to do this communication that's not just the board is that I'd like our messages to make sure they go out from like the manager's office and other department heads, and that nothing gets politicized. That it's good information from the town. It's not like me posting on my page about something and then people start saying, well, Candy did it, Candy this, Candy that. It could go out as, good information linking to our town web pages. The other part of this is asking the person to kind of keep up or notice in our web pages when something's like out of date. And that way, because staff is working so hard, they work so hard to go in lots of different directions, and these things weren't there when a lot of jobs were established. So as much as everybody tries to keep everything up to date, somebody that was dedicated to this task. Now, initially, it's probably gonna take a lot of time to do that, but once it gets ongoing, then I don't think there'll be a lot of time spent on it, a few hours a week saying, hey, Bob, what's up? Or Lori, what's up? Or Mark, and putting things out there that come out, I think.
As part of my motion, should we have proposal due date confirmed at September 14th?
No, I just want to do that yet because I got to find out more.
Okay.
Anything else? All in favor? Okay, so I'll get going on that tomorrow. Okay, item B, 11B. I put this on the agenda.
I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay, thank you, Steve and Sheila. You'll note that in your notes there. Item 11B is the state statute regarding tuition in towns in which no high school is maintained. I put this on the agenda because in my 17 years on the board, that we've had this discussion with, when it comes to our budgets. We get to this all the time, and our budgets occur with the education budget. And then particularly with the high school we have in town, the Gilbert School. The state statute doesn't refer specifically to that school, but it does refer to the fact that the academies, these schools get to set their own tuition rate. And up until last year, July 1st, 2019, it hadn't happened before that until like the early 90s, when it did happen again, that the Gilbert School decided what the tuition was going to be, which was more than was talked about during a series of negotiations that didn't finally come to an end, but there was a series of negotiations. The negotiations didn't produce a final answer. So this past July 1st, we, of course, the school board got $100,000 a bill from the Gilbert School that they weren't expecting. There was an agreed upon amount through our budget proceedings where it was $450,000 in additional funding to the Gilbert School. That was agreed to by $150,000 from the Board of Selectmen putting on the town support for education line, and there was $300,000 that the Winchester Board of Education Superintendent and Board of Education put in on their line with savings that that superintendent found in efficiencies or had to cut some programs that they were thinking of having. So all of that happened after 8 months of negotiations, and then on July 1st, when the letter came with the tuition request, it was $100,000 more. So the Winchester Board of Ed put it in, took it out of the line item of leftover funding that we approved, and she could not go forward with some of the things, and the board couldn't go forward with some of the things that they wanted to do. This is all a financial structure that's based on state law. If we don't change state law, then we can't change the underlying struggle and function of this tuition that goes back and forth each and every year. If we don't change the equation, this will keep going until, you know, I'm no longer here, or some of us aren't here anymore. And the interesting thing about this language is, I guess it originated in 1949. There were some technical changes in 1995, but other than that, we haven't, I don't know of any other state statute changes. I'm sure we'll find out if there were any, but I didn't see any in the, I gave you a whole list of resources at the end of my, my little draft there, and one of it was the, let me just, where to go, see if I can find it for you. It was the Town of Winchester Education Task Force in July 22nd, 2010 had put together all the laws in there, and that's where I had gotten that information from in terms of the updates to it. The other thing I looked at is the legislative research in 2016 with Woodstock Academy and other private academies, and that shows that the laws can be tailored to each academy or all three, because I've had a conversation with our state legislator, and often these things, when they go through, you have Norwich Free Academy that is well-financed and has a lot of people that will come forward to the state legislature. You have Woodstock Academy, and you have, right now, the Gilbert School. So those academies that were qualified under these state statutes, most of them, the laws are tailored to them, but there can be one school and not the other schools, as that seems to have been part of the issue with the 2017 Senate bill that was designed through the state Board of Education. The Connecticut State Board of Education had wanted some changes in terms of how the information comes out from these private academies. So that was in 2017. So our Board of Education, Winchester Board of Education, a couple of weeks ago had a discussion about working with some state legislation to make some changes along these same tuition lines. So I'm proposing that we work with the Board of Education and to move forward with language in a letter to request the state legislature to modify existing state of Connecticut statutes that were established in 1949 regarding tuition costs for high school students when the town does not maintain its own high school. Specifically, we would request a required negotiation process for tuition, including mediation and arbitration when public funds from a single public sending district are used for more than 90% of the academy's operating budget, which is what we have. It's $7.1 million this past year. So that's my proposal, so I put it out there, as I said I would. I said I would bring something in August, and it's August, and here it is. If you're in agreement with it, and in agreement with moving forward with the Board of Education to draft a letter, not the exact letter that'll go out right now, but to try to change the equation so that perhaps, instead of just getting a $100,000 bill out of the blue, that there could be a negotiation, a mediation and arbitration, which settles the matter sometime before our budget season so that everybody knows what we're working with, that everybody doesn't have to, tug and pull forever and ever, and then in the end have to pay the tuition anyway. So your thoughts? Or you can leave me hanging out. Candace?
I also had an issue with finding out about the XXX lease that we had, and I've been selectman once before, and I think any new selectman coming on board would have no idea of this agreement, because the years that I was selectman and since then, there were no capital improvement requests from the Gilbert, so I had no idea that in the 90s there was this lease agreement. That means a lack of information also for the selectmen of what our agreements are with Gilbert beyond, this. I think that any new selectman that joins the town needs to be fully aware of the agreement that the town has with Gilbert in every aspect of it, every contract too.
Well, the triple net lease is actually with the Gilbert School Corporation and the trust, which has nothing to do with the Winchester Board of Education or the Board of Selectmen. It's actually the school corporation has that with a trust. All our school board does is deal with tuition, and then special ed is something that we manage transportation, but the lease is between the corporation and the trust.
So why was that brought up in our negotiation, at budget time?
Because the increase in the Gilbert budget, part of it was for their roof. The reason they asked for extra money was to repair the roof. And the roof was part of the tuition, and the question came up, why are there capital improvements being paid through tuition? That's because the Gilbert School Corporation, which has no other funding than student tuition. The trust has trust money, and most of it's scholarship, but they have a little bit of the other. But the Gilbert School Corporation leases the building from the trust. And when they signed the lease agreement, the trust said, okay, well, you're gonna fix everything. So that's over here, and so the only way that the school can get money is through tuition to fix things. So that's why it came up. But again, when they asked for tuition, this was driven because July 1st, 2019, the town taxpayers, it's $100,000 more. After 8 months of talking about it, all of a sudden there was a surprise. Anything else from anyone? Linda?
Yeah, I looked at facts as well, and, I think it's 2020, the statutes are 71 years old. The terms of the trust are 125 years old, or they were established 125 years ago. And the town's been paying tuition, full tuition for our students since 1947. The trust initially paid full tuition for the students for 52 years. you know, it's, our community and society's really changed, and I think it's time that we really look at this with new eyes and a clear head, to ensure that the students' needs are met and that our taxpayers' needs are met. Yeah, I agree, we can't continue to battle every year and make little or no progress. I support the proposal.
I support the proposal as well.
Just a few, I think this kind of a proposal to the state to kind of clarify some of the state laws is very important. Whether it is for these 3 endowed academies, because we're not saying this is going to be just for one school, because the state law applies to the 3 endowed academies. So any request that we make here is to change the state law for those endowed academies. That's a tough road that we're going to face, and I suspect that there will be a lot of opposition at the state level to make that happen. We are in a situation here where we should be able to negotiate these things here in town, and we continue to look at this situation as the Gilbert School is completely independent. The Gilbert School Corporation, just to make sure everybody knows, has 4 members that are appointed by the Winchester Board of Education. They also have another 5 members who are all taxpayers and long-term residents of this town. When I was a reporter in town in the 70s, I was covering a lot of the issues surrounding the cost of education for Gilbert, the interrelationship. There was no Gilbert School Corporation at that point. The decisions were made by the trust members who sat on the school board. The bill was given and it was paid. It was in the 1990s where this law was changed, wherein the corporation had to then have public membership to it. And the reason for that is because at that point they were looking for public money. So in effect, we do have a public Gilbert School Corporation that meets publicly, that has meetings just like the regular Winchester School Board, and anybody can go to it and talk to them. I think that the issue, and it's been my contention on this issue, that it's the makeup of that board that's so difficult, because we hear things can't get settled because there's always this 4 members against 5 members. If that could be resolved, and I believe it can be resolved if both parties approach it in an independent thinking and creative way, then we can resolve these issues of presenting budgets that we don't have 100% agreement upon. We could go through this state law thing, and I think it's a great proposal. I'd like to see the state law changed and allow these negotiated issues to be done. But I think we can do that here if we were open to consider ways to work together. And I think if the Gilbert School Corporation did not have a section of 5 against 4 all the time, but we were able to unify that, we wouldn't have these issues. They would all get resolved, and the budgets that be presented would be presented. I don't think anybody, and I think I know most of the members on the Gilbert School Corporation by long-term names and association in town, everyone, no matter which side they are on, speaks only for the benefit of better education for the high school. and actually 7 through 12, so the middle school and high school. My objective is to try to find a way to make that Gilbert School Corporation much more unified. And I don't know how we force that unless both the two people who provide memberships to that, or the two groups that provide membership to the school corporation, the school board and the trust, work together to unify itself. So far, that's not being done. And until somebody forces it, a state law like this, or something else happens, we'll continue to have these issues. So I'm in favor of going to the state and seeing that the state law can be changed and better negotiating ability through state law. But I would also like to see better negotiating and better ability within the Gilbert School Corporation. The 9 members work out these issues. And it's a shame that we can't. As I said, when the 70s and 80s, and Linda's absolutely right, there was no tuition paid in this town until the 50s. And even then, it was very, very small. If you go back in the records, it shows that all of the other surrounding towns paid something like $100 or $200 more than the town of Winchester paid for tuition. So the town of Winchester has always had an interaction with the Gilbert School on a lower cost education proposal. And in the 70s, as I said, they would just present a budget to the town and have to get paid. So let's see if we can encourage the Gilbert School Corporation to manage these issues themselves, because that is an independent board. It should be able to do these things.
Well, I'll say, well, just quickly, Jack, that would be great if it happened, but you know what? In 2019, for the school year that just ended, they all had an agreement. Everybody was in agreement until we got into July 1st and we got the bill.
See, Candy, I recognize that. I
So
understand the
where did
motivation here. I'm
right,
okay with that.
So I don't know where the bill came, even though there was an agreement.
I know.
And then, you
And I
know,
don't-
if they want to even up the board 5-5, that would be great. 4-4, 5-5, even up the board. Make them have to do it. So they'd have to, the school corporation would have to agree to an even board.
I'm,
So if you want to work on that, get to an even board, that'd be great.
God, I have been trying.
I'll give you a
Candy.
bonus and everything.
I have been trying. I have been trying.
Melissa?
This $100,000 issue is a crazy issue. I understand that. And that was never, well, it is a hot point, and I agree with it. But
Well,
it's a hot point.
I was just gonna say, you know, obviously, I'm a big supporter of education in town, and I just feel like there's a couple systemic problems that come over and over again, and part of it, you know, is just the financial function of having 2 superintendents, and even that, there's no collaboration with that. So, I mean, any other town, you look at Litchfield, you look anywhere, they're not paying all of these salaries. So the fact that there's always an overage and needing more money is not going towards education, it's going to a salary, you know, that could be unneeded at this point. So I think we have that. And I guess I have a question just on the, you know, that leaves a bitter taste in my mouth with the lawsuit behind Hinsdale School, like what's happening with that right now? Because again,
That's a
like,
trust issue. That's
I
not the
get
school
it, but,
corporation.
no, I understand that, but it's sort of the good faith of the entire entity. There is not the collaborative feel. Like, I mean, Jack, believe me,
agree with
I
you.
agree that if we all could do that, I don't think that the collaboration, I mean, I think the collaboration is here on the Winchester Board of Education. I think they want to make things better. I think they're doing, you know, more with less, et cetera. And I think we've tried, like, to back up things. So it's like when you turn around and everybody's coming up with the same thing. Everybody wants the students to just sort of be under one umbrella, to get the very best that they can get. Who wouldn't pay more taxes? Like, I would, to make sure that the education is better. Like, I'm not against ever increasing the taxes when it's something about that, but it doesn't go there. And so where's the improvement towards the education? And then you get into this kind of philosophical argument, like, oh, you're not for education. Well, I don't know, so I'm not sure. So I never know where we stand with it, because.
Melissa, they're valid points, and this discussion and these things we've had them for years.
Oh, I know.
Years. And it just baffles me that this can't be resolved, because every one of those 9 members on the Gilbert School Corporation are all taxpayers. They all live in town, and they all have values that they believe in that are similar towards each other.
I would agree.
Well, why can't we get this resolved? And
Because when the tuition gets set and the town taxpayers don't give any more money, right? The tuition gets set, the town taxpayers vote on a budget and don't give any more money. And we can go back into the 2000s when people forced 0% increases. Granted, Henry took all that money, but we were still having no increases in budgets and no increases in budgets. And when that happened, there were still tuition increases to the Gilbert School, which had to come from regular pre-K to 6 education, because you couldn't touch special ed, you couldn't touch transportation, you couldn't touch the nurses. So the money, there's only so many things in the equation that work. So, but I'll go back to, the Board of Education, Winston Board of Education has to resolve most issues. This issue I brought forward from the Board of Selectmen because I believe we have a financial stake when we are taxed an extra $100,000 using this state law that allows them to set tuition. So I'm just targeting this piece of it because the Board of Ed is responsible for the other part. If we didn't have this last July 1st, 2019, this bill that didn't affect the taxes, I probably wouldn't have brought this forward, but it happened. And so that's why we're here. And so as a Board of Selectmen, I believe this is the one area we can get involved in because it does affect the tax rate here in town. So, so that's why I think I zeroed in on this piece because it changes an equation.
I'm not in disagreement with that, Candy. I want to tell you, I'm not in disagreement with that issue.
Right, okay.
My point is we should be doing more than this. This is, we won't see this happen. Will the state get this thing passed?
Can I just have one little recess? It's my father, and I never know what it is. Hello? Yeah.
So,
No, can I call you back? Okay, bye.
you know, my issue here is this is going to take a legislative movement that's probably going to take 6 months, maybe even a year to make change happen like this. And we will be dealing with the same issue next July or next June or May when we're looking at the budget. There's got to be another force that we can put into this to say, we're not going to settle for these kinds of issues. We need to get resolution. And my points have been in the past meetings, unify thinking, not a we, they, unify thinking. And whether it's a 5-5, 4-4, or a 4-4 with an independent chairman, find some way that the Gilbert School Corporation runs the Gilbert School and everybody's happy with it. And the bills come in and we know what they are and we pay them. This proposal to the state will take a year. It won't get done very quickly. You know that. It's a start. We should be starting other places locally too.
Well, okay, you can make those proposals.
I
And then I'll
tried,
give you-
Candy, I tried.
Now we'll do double bonus. But anyway, so I'd like to make a motion that the Board of Selectmen work with the Board of Education Subcommittee to discuss state statute with regards to tuition in towns when no high school is maintained. Thank you, Melissa, for a second. Any other discussion on that?
Just let me ask one question. No letter would be sent until we also, as a board, see the letter?
Yes,
It wouldn't be sent by this committee.
no. And if the Board of Education wants to do a joint one, if that's where their vote comes from, then it would go. But we have to draft it, and of course, also have to work with Kevin Nelligan as well. And then we will also obviously be reaching out to our state representative in the 63rd and our state senator in the 30th for this, because it would have to go through a bill.
Yep, yep.
So this
And
is.
and you're still proposing by October 5th, that letter be ready to go?
Yes, because we have to move it because the legislature will get elected on November
Correct.
3rd.
Yep.
So they start proposing bills before they meet in January. So this would be something that would have to go through pretty quick. Or would have to be ready for after, in November, and then we know November comes and Christmas comes and everything kind of gets kind of tight and stuff, so.
Certainly, if we want to see any changes before next May, they have to take that kind of action.
And whether it will or whether it won't, but I think it's worth a try.
All right, don't disagree with the, worth a try it.
Well, that's my opinion anyway.
I support that. I just
Okay.
also think we should be initiating other ways to do this.
Todd?
You know, I completely agree with everything we've said about if we could settle it in town, it's best for everyone. You know, Gilbert is a partner in town, wants to be a partner in town most of the time. But when it comes to their finances, they set their dollar amount, and that's it. The citizens really don't have say in the Gilbert budget. You know, they can defeat the budget if they wanted to, but Gilbert doesn't have to change their budget. And until they work with the town and the citizens and taxpayers, I think that's when we lost some of our. When they work together with the town, you know, I think all the problems would straighten themselves out. But as long as there's the state law, that's always going to be in the way. And when there's some difficulty in the negotiation, they're going to fall back on the state law. So I agree that we should at least consider having the law changed to make it more of a partnership with Gilbert and the town.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Can we get Steve back in the room for?
I can't agree with you.
At least it'd make it so everybody, at least you want to have any surprises, just be right there. Okay, the next item up is 11C, emergency response and power restoration for storm Isaias. Bob gave us an overview of all the things that he had done, but for the public and just any thoughts that we may have had after our meeting. Last Thursday, we had a special meeting. We talked to Bob, we talked to Steve Williams, the fire chiefs, Jamie and Pete Marchand were part of that meeting. And we discussed the things that had happened during the storm and what was going on and the numerous, if anything could go wrong, it went wrong. The cell towers went down and their battery backups didn't work really well. And then we know we lost power. We all didn't know that it was going to be this huge windstorm. And then Town Hall was without the internet. And then our generators, while they appeared to be all ready, they decided to have problems at that particular point in time. So we met, we started talking about things, and one of the things we did ask at that meeting, and I know that everybody on the board feels this way, and I know that even Steve and Bob and everybody else feels this way, is that we need to find a communication strategy for the public. With the internet down, there was some delay in getting out some messages. Where were the messages supposed to come from? In all emergency responses, there are certain communication strategies there. So ask Steve Williams and because he's our emergency management director. Asked him to come up with a communication plan to the public, because it seemed at least to me, that everybody had DPW, Bob, police, fire, had everything covered on the backside. Everything was being done on the backside that needed to get done, except that this board and others, like, we didn't know a few things, or we didn't know kind of what was happening. And so that communication piece, I think, has to happen. And then the other thing I know I talked about that day, and I will ask Linda to do this, and Bob has already probably started the conversation on this. But our high-rise, you know, our senior housing, our emergency plans and the emergency plans for the district are to send everybody to either the senior center or Torrington Middle School. If one of these storms hit in the middle of January or hit a couple weeks ago when it was really high, what would we have done? You know, where's the, you know, there's a plan that there's a shelter there. But the other issue is, what money is there, and what can we find out for, like, Greenwoods to have generation there, because they don't have generation, right? And
Not adequate.
right, and not adequate. Chestnut has it for the main lobbies and stuff. So what would it take to, is there grants out there, because there seems to be a lot of money out there with the CARES and the FEMA, to maybe have these larger complexes improve their ability to generate electricity for the oxygen units, nebulizers, heat, and yeah, well, that'd be food delivery, but heat and air conditioning and stuff. So I think that's why I put it on here, so that we could all, you know, talk a little bit more about, you know, where all this, what we know the good things, and then we know the things that we have to improve on. So that's why I put it here.
Bob, when we talked last week on this, I think the question came up, and I don't know if there was an answer. The emergency generators for here, and I guess the other places where we have emergency generators,
We had
are
power.
they tested on a regular
They are.
basis?
We had power, we just didn't have sufficient line power because of Eversource connection. I mean, so we had the building, we had basic electricity. We just did not have enough for the communications because we were still dependent upon Eversource for that. So the generator didn't have anything to do with the Eversource problem. So with the generators here, I think we had generators everywhere. We had some problem at the senior center, although the senior center was closed. The generator worked, we had a transmission issue, but generally speaking, the generators operated.
Well, Candy mentioned, and I think I heard some discussion last week, that some of these generators are old, need to be replaced.
We'd like to have generators where we don't have generators. It's not so much the age, we needed more generators in other areas,
Okay.
and there are grants for those.
Like, I would hate for us to have to evacuate Greenwoods
Right.
or Chestnut, and it would be a strain on the shelters, the strain to get everybody there. So I think, Linda, you sit on that board.
Yeah, there's a meeting on next Monday for senior housing, and I'll attend. I'll bring this to their attention. But she manages quite well. I don't know what her emergency plans are, but I'm sure there's something in place because it is a government facility.
We
I'm
had the
sure
other,
it
because there's
is.
4 over there, so I oversee 2,
Right,
and the other 2 are run independently.
right.
But the 2, we've got generators in the other one because they're newer.
Both, no. Laurel Commons does not have a
Laurel Commons has
generator.
got generation capacity for emergency generation, but not for the whole building, whereas Carriage Maker Place has it for the entire building.
Okay. But I will check with the director, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, because I think it could be a partnership with, like I said, with all these grants that are out there, because after Snowtober in 2011, was it, that all the gas stations got their generators, because that's the problem we had back then, was we couldn't get gas. So there, and even, you know, there seems to, I mean, we need to look at with Steve and the emergency management and Bob is, you know, what are the other things that people need during these certain events? You know, like this event, it just needed to be water and it seemed charging. So is there a way that we could, and I know with Candace, she talked about it last Thursday too, is be able to do public service announcements ahead of time to get ready for things. You know that this is gonna be,
Well, when we looked at 2016, when Steve he holds events a month prior to, they say September is hurricane season. And, well, now it's July, really. So I don't know what the emergency response teams have designated as the hurricane month. And my question to him was, is it now August? Because it has to be. So more so than, even us, as an organization and as a municipal government, again, we have to get our citizens prepared. That's what Steve tries to do in August for September. We need to start communicating in July. It's clear that nothing's going to, we need to make them, do they have generators that they need? What are they going to do in the future of, what happened then in 2011? I think a lot of people done a lot of things. How do they properly maintain their generators? Are they installed properly? I'm finding out, I don't have a generator, but finding out that if you're just plugging in a refrigerator to a generator, you could be sending back feeding to the line. And Eversource can't work on that line, it's a hot wire. So there's a lot of things that people need to be made aware of. I saw communications from Torrington about generators, and I told my neighbor she had hers incorrectly, being managed. So it's not only that, but in the senior living, for every one of us, how do we handle a power outage with food? What's the lifespan of it before you get it? There are posters for all these things that we can share beyond, before any of these activities.
What do we do?
Todd?
So I spoke with you a little bit after the meeting about this, and this is probably something that, we can hand off to the social worker when they do start for the town. But, we need to look at possibly a self-reporting list of medical conditions. I know there's problems with HIPAA privacy laws, but, we need to be able to reach out to people who may need assistance in a power outage if they're on oxygen and they're not at the senior facility, for example. Some way where they can, maybe similar to the police department vacation checklist, where they can contact us, and if something happens in that area, we have somebody to contact them and make sure they're okay and meeting all their needs, for oxygen and medical supplies and things like that. Granted, like I said, problems with HIPAA privacy laws where, we can't share information like that. But I think we need to at least explore or have someone explore a program like this.
You're right, Todd. Being aware, 2011, after that, some friends of mine went out and bought generators and said, okay, I'm prepared. They never used them. And here, 10 years later, now they try to start them up and they don't work so well.
The other thing too, we should work with Charlotte Hungerford as well, because we're talking about these oxygen units. All the doctors, these are prescriptions. And then they're not even, myself taking care of an elderly parent who then went on oxygen, and then they should be getting information from their caregivers or their providers of what to do if there's a power outage with their equipment. It shouldn't be, everyone learns when they have an elderly parent about that. It's nothing you're totally blindsided by all of the issues that you're faced with. So, I'd like to hear from the medical community, not only giving the HIPAA, what are these people given when they have their equipment? How are they prepared for an outage? And they're not.
Candy, you were on the board in 2011.
Yes.
Would anything come after? We were out for 5 days, 2011? Was there anything,
We were out for like 8 days.
Yeah.
was anything done after that?
Yeah, all the gas stations got generated, and the state talked about microgrids, and all those things happened, so that's why this time, I think all the gas stations were up and going, plus they also had power. So I think a lot of that improvement happened, but not everybody, everything did it. And again, that was in good weather, just
Yeah.
like this one was in good weather. So what happens if it's not? You know? And I think that, you know, there's a whole emergency planning group, Region 5, we're part of what, Region 5?
Region 5.
And they have all these things that you see that Steve posts in terms of, you know, what went down, what got harmed, how many trees, how many roads, how many this, how many that.
Well, years ago, there used to be a civil preparedness director,
He is it.
That's what this
That's
is.
Steve. He's the emergency management.
and he would keep everything going, and
Coordinate amongst the state.
Yeah.
There's a central one from the state that coordinated with all the regions. So
Yeah.
we were in communication. They were doing a pretty good job. It was all working around Eversource was the problem from the state level.
Yeah, they went remote. They went to the remote truck with satellite links. But this room used to be what was called the EOC. Remember all those cabinets that were in here? They had all the equipment that came through federal funding for it, so that you could communicate with everyone.
We'd be better off with walkie-talkies this last storm.
I can't hear you.
We would have been better off with walkie-talkies in this.
Yeah.
Battery-operated walkie-talkies.
And then you have to charge the batteries after so many hours.
But anyway, so I think we'll continue to follow up with this. You know, and Steve will be,
We're doing a lot of work on this now and we'll continue to do so.
the communication plan to everybody, so. All right. Okay, moving on to 11D, proposal line item transfers. Bob, Bruce?
I've got here, I've only got one right here. For $10,765, we're transferring from the teacher's pensions to the state, $10,765 to several items. Environmental council, $2,000, data processing and purchasing, $2,000. Winchester Fire Department, $100. Miscellaneous, we've got several bank fee combinations here for $2,665 and $4,000 to street lighting, which adds up to that $10,765. This is really the last and final cleanup from the year end last year. So this is the last cleanup transfer from last year's budget. I think Bruce has got
And
it.
Bob, just to be clear, the money that we're taking from the teacher's pension to the state is not from the Board of Education
No,
budget. It is from the town's budget because the town pays for that.
correct.
Just want to be clear on that.
This was,
Just mandated by
Bruce?
the state.
Bruce, go ahead. Because we don't pay
A
for it.
little clarification on this. So you might remember that the governor proposed in his budget for fiscal 20 that towns would be responsible for making a contribution to the state teachers' pension. And the number that was suggested for Winchester was this $10,765. So we built it into our budget that the town manager presented on middle of March 2019. During the legislative session, that bill was never passed. So we ended up with a budget item with no requirement to make a contribution to the state. So these were surplus budget funds at the end of fiscal '20, and so we're using them to resolve some small deficits.
Thank you for that explanation.
They never had it, so.
And there has been no further discussion about towns making contributions to the state teachers' pension fund.
If they were, that would be in a new budget,
Yeah,
not the
but
old.
it's-
Yeah, I thought we were clear on that. I wanted just some verbal,
Right, so this is just a
Conversation about it.
clarification.
But this is,
Closing the books.
these are dollars that were not part of the town appropriation to the Board of Education.
yes. Understood. Thank you.
So,
So moved.
thank you, Candace, that's what I'm looking for. Is there a second? Thank you, Melissa. Any others? All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
Last
Okay,
one.
11E is the steep resolution. Bob, you want to?
Again, this is, we're requesting the state, the state's got steep money out there. It's very limited, only one project. And this project that we're going to apply for is going to probably be under $100,000, which is close to the maximum permitted. But nonetheless, we have to get back on the list. We were on the list for steep grants but it expired after 4 years, so we have to recertify, a request to get back on the list, to be certified by the state. So I'm just requesting here that you, this is a certified resolution to get us back on the request list. So it's not for the grant itself, but just to get us onto the list to request a grant.
Because each of the towns has to choose either being eligible for the STEEP, Small Town Economic Assistance, or the Urban Act grants under Section 4.66C.
We've always found it more beneficial to be on the STEEP grant.
So that's why I have to do the resolution.
I'll make a motion to.
Okay, is there a second? Thank you. Candace? Any other questions for Bob on this?
Do we have to sign this tonight?
We need to get this done by next week, yes.
So we should do it tonight?
We should.
Sheila's here.
Yes, I think we can do that, yes.
Do you need everybody's signature on this? I think the way the page says just how many yeses, how many noes.
Oh, it's a motion and.
It's a motion and
Got it.
second.
Got it.
But Sheila's here for the signatures, what I think. you
All
were
right,
looking
only
for.
Sheila signs it.
Okay, so we've had it motioned and seconded. Any other questions on that? If not, all in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Now we move to item 12, citizens' comments. 860-738-6958, if you want to call in. John?
Yes, I'd like to make one more comment on that tree that came down. Tom did a good job of cleaning it up. Once they were clear to work around the wires that were still there. I appreciate that. And my other thing is, what do we, at Pearson School, do we have a generator there?
At Pearson?
Do we have a generator?
Generator at Pearson? Not adequate for the whole building, but we will.
I'd like to see maybe in the future, we can get one for the whole building.
We plan on having any institution completely generated.
Okay,
We've got one at Bachelor, but not down there.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, 13, selectmen comments and reports. Anyone?
Oh, just to bring you up to date, the Soldiers Monument, usually we have an opening on Labor Day. We are not going to have an opening this Labor Day. First of all, for the COVID issues, it's pretty hard to fit people in there and stay 6 feet apart. And secondly, the windows that we have been working on for months and months and months should be in the next couple of weeks, and there's still a lot of cleanup that will be done. So there'll be no opening on Labor Day. We anticipate we will not open on, according to the vote the commission took last week, we will not open on Veterans Day either. And we are very disappointed that we also have to announce there will be no cemetery walk this year. We would have to plan and do the work right now to be prepared for October, and we're thinking that if we do all of this work now and we still can't get people close enough together to do the walk through the cemetery, it's just a lot of work that will be done and not able to be shown. So there will be no cemetery walk this year. So just keeping you up to date on what's happening with the monument.
The Single Fall Festival from Friends of Main Street, it will not be in existence this year. Again, it's a timing issue. It takes 6 months to prepare, and who knows how the Fall Festival will exist going forward. But it's not gonna happen this year.
It's disappointing, these things that are getting closed down, but, I mean, there are safety issues involved here. The festival, how could you ever hold that? How can we do things? So,
Probably means it's gonna be sunny all of fall. Because usually all the events get rain sometimes.
Yeah.
Anything else from anyone?
I assume the primary election went well. I didn't hear otherwise. I was an in-person voter. Could ask the town clerk voted in person and how many voted by mail, if you know that?
I do.
How's that for a setup?
That's a setup. But I brought over 503 absentee ballots, and at the polls, a total of 383 people went to the polls to vote. The system, which you didn't ask, but the process that we went through had some issues, but overall, it was a very good process. The state kept the clerks right up to date with the process that we had to do. It was very confusing for people to get a ballot application from the state and not from the clerk's office. But we managed to answer all the questions and the process went smoothly.
Good.
And everybody got a pen?
Everybody got a pen.
Everybody got a free pen when you voted. In person, you get a pen. You take it with you.
It's a lot of responsibility between the moderator and the registrars in our office getting everything done on time. It was huge, and November 3rd is going to be even bigger.
The line will be much longer in November, I would think.
Pardon?
The line will be much longer in November.
Yes, I think, or the absentee ballots will explode. I mean, we'll do both, yeah. Yeah.
I saw that the Secretary of State today made an announcement that used the ballot boxes as opposed to the postal service.
Yes,
So the ballot box will be out there at some,
people have the choice.
yes.
They can go through the post office, which is worked every other year, with no issues, or directly put it in our box outside of the town hall, and we pick them up once a day, and they come directly to our office.
Anything else, anyone? Steve?
Will we adjourn?
Second, please. Thank you, Melissa. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So somebody ought to, go see if they get some money from them. Mohart. Mr. Mohart?
No?
Mohart. The baseball player? Mohart. He has like $3 million. What I heard you to give. There's an application you do.
Is she still having
They should. Because today she said, when I heard her speak today, she said it was, like when you had to hire extra help and stuff.
Yeah,
It was worth trying for.
I thought you had to be reimbursement, but I'll ask.
Robert, can I ask you a question? Do you know anybody down at the Park Creek? Down there, on the water barrel?
No, I do not.
Because I've been trying to reach their security, because these people here say they can't do anything for me.
Have you
I
watched
left my
any
sunglasses
baseball
on the
game?
seat of my car when I was
Not ESPN.
not this past Friday, but Friday before.
Plus I watch parts of it here and there.
I went in to pay for my gas.
Boring.